What are your thoughts about lifelong monogamy? And what's your thoughts about polyamory, given that we've been talking about ideas of mate switching and poaching and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think that we evolved to be, I prefer the term pair bonded species. So, pair bonding is one of the strategies. Pair bonded long term mating is one of the strategies. But that doesn't necessarily mean for decades and decades or lifelong, because we often pair bond serially. So, we'll get into a relationship that might last a year or 5 years and then break up and then form another relationship. So, we engage in serial mating. We engage in infidelity. We engage in some short-term mating, so we have a what I describe as a menu of mating strategies, and which particular mating strategy an individual adopts depends on a wide variety of factors. I think some are just kind of personal proclivities. Some depend on your mate value. So if you are an 8, a 9, or a 10, you have more options for what mating strategy you want to pursue. If you're a 1 or a 2, you're not going to be able to be polyamorous in all likelihood. There's a lot of attention to polyamory now, and it's unclear whether there's an increase in it or whether people are just talking about it more. It is the case, and I know several people who are in polyamorous relationships, and I've talked with them in detail about them. And jealousy is often a factor in that. And they describe it as kind of like an emotion that has to be somehow tamed or dealt with in some way. And so in polyamory, there are many different types of polyamory. So in like one type, for example, is you have a primary love partner and then some others on the side that are permitted, usually in consensual terms, within an explicit contract that the primary partners work out. So it's okay if I know as one couple, it's okay if you do it outside the city limits of Los Angeles, but not within. Some say it's okay for Thursday, but I want the weekend, Friday and Saturday nights to me. It's okay if there's sexual involvement, but no emotional involvement. So there are different strategies that people work out, and some of them are designed to try to keep jealousy at bay. Because I think it's an evolved emotion that is a natural emotion that people experience. Now, interestingly, there's a while we're on this topic, there's a sex difference therein. Namely, if you contrast sexual jealousy with emotional jealousy, or sexual infidelity with emotional infidelity. And so we in one set of studies, I put my participants, or we used to call them subjects, into this, what I call the Sophie's choice of the jealousy dilemmas. Where I said, imagine your partner became interested in someone else, and you discover that they have had passionate sexual intercourse with this person, and they've gotten emotionally involved with them. They've fallen in love with them. Which aspect of the infidelity upsets you more? And that's why I call it the Sophie's choice. Both terrible choices, right?
Yeah.
But men much more likely to say the sexual infidelity is what upsets me. More women, it's like, why even ask me? It's a no-brainer. 85% of the women say the emotional infidelity is what bothers me more. Former student of mine, Barry Cooley, did a really interesting study of analysis of this reality show called Cheaters. I've actually never seen it, but where if you suspect your partner of cheating, then a detective from the TV team will follow the person, and then they'll call up and say, "We've just found your husband here in the no-tell motel. Do you want to come down and talk to him?" And so what he analyzed, though, was the verbal interrogations that people had when they confronted their partner, and women wanted to know, are you in love with her? Men wanted to know, did you fuck him? Mm-hmm. Or did you have sex with him? Mm-hmm. And so it's this sex difference in sensitivity to these different cues of infidelity. And of course, there's an evolutionary logic to this sex difference. And it's been replicated not the cheater study, but the hypothetical Sophie's Choice study has been replicated now in Sweden and China, and it's a universal sex difference.
So, given that sex difference, and you mentioned another one that just returned to, which is in the engineering disciplines,
Yeah, person thing
person thing.
orientation.
So, until I started to see writing about it in the sort of psychology literature, I observed just anecdotally a lot. And the reason I observed it is I was confused. So I care a lot about robots. I'm a robotics person. And so a lot of males in the robotics community really didn't care about the what's called the human robot interaction problem, which is like robots when they interact with humans. And then a lot of females, all brilliant in the robotics community, cared about the human robot interaction. They cared about the human, the what the robot how it communicates with the human in the picture, human in the loop. And I was really confused, like, because the difference to me in my anecdotal interactions, but the N is quite large there. Like I'm in the robotics community. I know a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I was confused because for me, I really care about human robot interaction.
Yeah.
I care about both a lot. And in the same thing here in terms of emotional cheating versus physical cheating. I care a lot about both, and I have like this oscillating brain. So I wonder what that says about my brain. So I'll often wonder this because there's specific sex differences that are represented in the data in the literature, and I seem to oscillate depending on mood.
Yeah.
And I wonder what that says about me. Why do I care so much about that robot on the floor? I care not half. I care about how it works, and the other half how it makes other people feel.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. So I guess what I would say, this gets back to our earlier discussion of agency and communion, where I actually think that it's a sign of being well balanced to have both capacities within you. And so you get people who are unimodal, or they just have one mode of operating. Let's say it's the thing mode, which engineers tend to be good at. You have to be good at it to be a good engineer, because things have to actually work.
Yes.
It's not in some dream or hypothetical state. Things have to actually work. But with the agency and communion, I think it's good to have a balance, and that's why I think some of the best romantic relationships are those where people are they're high on what they used to call androgyny, where they have both the positive features of agency and communion, the positive features of masculinity and femininity within the same mix, but also with the footnote of not the unmitigated agency or unmitigated communion, both of which can be negative. And so I view these as capacities, and some people are out of balance. Some people have a good balance between the two. It sounds like you have a good balance between the two.
Well, but also the allocation. I feel like it's a very dynamic thing. It's like at least aware for me personally of the beauty between humans, of the dance, of the push and pull, of the different moods. It's like a dynamical system. It's not two static entities fully represented and consistent through every interaction.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes, people might confuse the fact that I often talk about love, and I love humans, that I don't have a temper, that I don't have I lose my shit all the time, especially like on things I really am passionate about, like people I work with and so on. Yeah, I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
But underneath it, there's a deep love and respect for humans. But like I lose my shit all the time, and that chaos, that roller coaster, I think that's what makes human relations awesome. I mean, the push and pull of it. Of course, it can oscillate too far, which is when it becomes Amber Heard type of situation, when it turns to emotional or physical violence, when it turns to jealousy, crosses a line where it's hurtful, and there's like it crosses that vast gray landscape of what is abuse versus what is just beautiful turmoil of human nature, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's complicated. It's yeah.
Yeah, it's complicated and it's dynamic. And I would just add to that, I thought you phrased that brilliantly. But I would just add to that, it also depends on sort of what you're trying to do. And so I think some of the oscillation can be what problem you're trying to solve. And so if you're, I don't know, trying to, uh, you know, build a bridge or something, you need to be very thing oriented and, uh, make sure the damn thing actually works and doesn't collapse when a car goes over it. If you're trying to form a relationship, and you're entirely thing oriented, it's not going to work. And that's one of the people. One of the things with and males tend to be more on the so-called spectrum side of things, where one of the hallmarks is a deficit in social mind reading. Just to add to your point about, I guess I've already made it, that of the dynamic properties of the roller coaster is depending on what problem you're trying to solve, you might want to toggle back and forth to one pole or the other.